Field checking your gauge weekly is a really good idea. It takes very little time, and it will pinpoint problems before they cause errors in your results. There's two basic ways of doing it. The quick guide shows one way, but I'll show you an even easier way first. Since we leave the gauge connected most of the time, and there are connections on the gauge itself which can leak, we want to check the entire system. How we do that is we take the 3 tubes from the end of the umbilical, we've got the yellow, green, and the blue, and we alternately connect them to the blue. What that does when we push this fitting on there is it compresses the air inside the tube and a pressure shows up on the gauge. So we'll just connect the green and the blue together, and the mere act of pushing them together like that compresses the air, and you'll notice that the pressure goes up. I've turned the auto zero off because each time the auto zero actuates, it loses a little bit of air, as I'll show you in a minute. I'll just turn the auto zero back on, and you'll notice that a little bit of air leaks out, and each time it clicks, it drops down just a little bit. There it's clicked, you notice it dropped down a couple of pascals and so on. This is also a way that we can check the complete range. The harder we push the tube on to the male-to-male connector, the more compression we get. But we're actually checking the gauge in the range that we're interested in. So now we've checked the green tube and the blue tube. They're obviously not leaking. So we'll disconnect the green and connect the yellow. And we'll notice that they are not only not leaking, but they're also measuring almost exactly the same pressure within, let's say, half a pascal or so. Another way to field check your gauge is to use a short length of tubing and make a connection between channel A on one side, channel B on the other. And here I've connected the green to the blue, and you'll notice that I have a very high pressure there. Because this tube is very small, there's a lot of compression going on there, and it's actually checking the gauge at a very high part of the scale. If we press auto zero, the pressure will bleed off and it will eventually drop down through the entire range. This is a good way to check both channels of the gauge and to even check one gauge against another. What we're looking for is that these readings will be within 1% of each other, or about 0.25 pascals, whichever is greater. So now we can check the other side by putting them on the yellow and the red, and we'll notice that we're not getting any leaks on that side of the gauge either. It's holding up just fine and reading almost exactly the same reading. So the gauge is in all likelihood working perfectly. It is very unusual that both channels will be both in error.